Hi, I'm Ali Porti, fashion and lifestyle journalist and editor of Zayla magazine. I've always been interested in biographies and in the stories of people's lives, basically listening to what stirs their souls. Welcome to the soulful side of life, where I let you in on some of my conversations with inspiring people from around the world in fashion, faith, entertainment, music, and entrepreneurship. These are conversations that stir the soul about people's journeys, about the ups and downs of life, and how they have overcome certain situations. I hope that these episodes will inspire your life in some way, so enjoy over a cup of something hot or on your drive to work. This is The Soulful Side of Life and can be found on Spotify Podcasts or Apple Podcasts. Kanessa Tixe is an industry PR guru with over 22 years of experience in Latin and non-Latin public relations, global and cross-marketing, branding, and talent management. I became acquainted with Kanessa during the pandemic when I wrote an article about an art project her then client Maluma was a part of in Miami, then on to doing a story for Forbes for her client model Anok Yai that's currently killing it in the fashion industry at the moment, and that's due to Kanessa's smart and witty strategic ability to position people on the world stage. She's a visionary and a storyteller with knowledge that spans from the public sector to the private sector, but she's also a hard worker. Her make it happen attitude has gotten music artists, actors, and athletes positioned in top media like ET, Variety, The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and her clients have been featured in campaign collaborations for brands like Mugler, Macy's, Saint Laurent, Alaïa, and Dolce&Gabbana. A true New Yorker from the Bronx, Kanessa's journey started in New York City's City Hall under then Mayor Rudy Giuliani, then on to Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Navigating the hardships that life can throw, Kanessa forged on, working for Robert De Niro and then for Rubenstein PR and then Quinn PR until she launched her own agency, TS Collective. There, she has represented dietitian and model Maye Musk, Colombian singer Maluma, and actress Jackie Cruz from Netflix's Orange is the New Black, and now she works with the likes of music mogul and film director Spiff TV, model Anok Yai, boxer Saul, Canelo, Alvarez, DJ Kaskade, and Romeo Santos. So enjoy this podcast episode. It's long, but it's so insightful, and it shows how a Latin woman, a Latin American woman, has navigated pivots, letdowns, and how she has rose to build her own global PR agency. So thank you for joining the podcast, Kanessa.
Of course, my pleasure.
And so yeah, we'll be discussing like PR, but before getting into like what PR is and what you do, your exciting life, what was your early life like that led you into the life that you have now?
That's an amazing question. I was born and raised in Jamaica, Queens.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised by my single mother who's from Dominican Republic.
Mm-hmm.
My father left us when I was 4, and my mom cleaned houses.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was a very hardworking woman, and she would always take me when she was cleaning these amazing houses in Long Island. And it always intrigued me when I was little, like, wow, this is how people live. Wow, I wonder who they are, because we would never see them. They were never home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it started intriguing me about people's lives, like wondering. how they live, who are they? Um, and then throughout the years, when my dad would pick me up over the weekends, he would always take me to Manhattan. We would do always some fun stuff. And when we would drive over the 59th Street Bridge, I always would look at all those big apartments and I'm like, I wonder who lives there. I wonder who lives there. Because you can only see like the chandeliers of the lighting, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I kind of knew I was always intrigued by people and people's stories.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, after that, throughout my life, it was a hard one. My life transitioned in so many ways. My mom got married and my dad got married at the same time. When I
Mm-hmm.
turned 10, I went from having two families and siblings. They're actually all the same age, funny enough.
Wow.
And just being this person that kind of stood alone between two families.
Mm.
And through my childhood, that was always very, very hard and a big of a struggle. But it was also interesting because now that I look back and I'm telling you this story, it's kind of where I am now in my career. I stood in between two families that were different cultures. My dad is Colombian, my mom's Dominican, and they eat, even though they're both Latin descent, they also have very different rituals and food,
Mm-hmm.
and they eat differently. So I learned very early age to kind of accustom myself between cultures, two different cultures, and adjust myself. So, and that's interesting because that's what I do now,
Yeah.
um, with my PR business. And then after that, um, lucky enough, my best friend in high school at the time, I graduated high school at 16. So I
Wow.
was looking for a job. I already had two jobs at 15. I worked in my mom's grocery store. She had some bodegas. She saved money from cleaning houses and built a big business of bodegas.
Mm.
And um, and my best friend at the time, she said, "Oh, my aunt is looking for an intern." I said, "Oh, I want to talk to your aunt. I'll take anything. I don't care." And she's like, "Well, she's coming tonight." I said, "Okay." So introduced me. Funny enough, the internship was to be her assistant in the press office at City Hall during Giuliani's administration.
Yeah.
And I took it. I didn't get paid, so I kept my other jobs. I was working for a dentist. I was babysitting and for some folks, and that's where it all started. I started learning really quickly, and when I started college at 17, unfortunately, I didn't get into the schools I wanted to because, well, my parents couldn't afford it to that level.
Yeah.
So I went to CUNY, I went to John Jay. I said, you know what? I want to maybe be a detective. And I applied several times in DC to their programs, and I couldn't get in because it was also a big payment.
Mm.
And I said, I'm gonna save money. I'm gonna learn anything I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Started the internship, and immediately I fell in love with PR, the adrenaline of crisis, the adrenaline of image, the adrenaline of strategy, and the adrenaline of being thrown into the wolves all the time.
Mm.
Imagine I'm 16, 17, and I'm reading the newspaper every day. I used to read, which I still do. I used to read 6 and 7 newspapers every day, and I would have to clip out all the press hits of Giuliani and put them in these long legal papers with tape and do photocopies and then make booklets for everybody every morning in City Hall. And I would have to walk into the mayor's office
Mm.
and the chief of staff and everybody and hand them out. But that was always my job, and picking up the phone from the media and also the community that would call us complaining. But immediately I learned very quickly, and I told my cousin's aunt, I want to learn more. And she's like, well, talk to the press officer, the chief press officer. And I spoke to him, and he's like, yeah. we'll teach you. So I started setting up at 17, 18 press conferences outside for the city council. I used to go to all legislation, hearings and
Mm-hmm.
take notes. My bosses, because they were that was not under their pay grade anymore.
Right.
So I would take notes and then come back and they were like, "You want to learn how to write a press release?" And I was like, "Sure." And the funny thing, it evolved into me pitching people. And that was interesting because that was right before 9/11.
Mm,
I would I would write our pitches in a typewriter and then fax them over to all the news stations and all the um, newspapers and at that time nothing was digital.
yeah.
And sometimes my bosses will be like, I need a contact at New York One that's not political. Let's do more of a lifestyle story. And we had a Barron's book at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a whole bunch of digital programs that you can look up anybody's contact. But it was a huge book, like huge, and
Yeah.
with tiny, tiny lettering. And I have to look through that book and mark all the contacts that we would want and call them, cold pitch them.
Wow.
And after 9/11, all that happened. We were remote for a while. And when we transitioned into Bloomberg, I loved working for Bloomberg because he would come into our press office every morning
Mm-hmm.
and kind of brief and motivate us. He was a great leader.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm not a big political person, but anymore. But um, there, I got to be a junior publicist at the age of 20.
In his
Um,
oral office, right? Not his news.
no, it was at City Hall
Okay.
under his administration. And the beautiful part is, as a junior publicist, imagine I just started college um, at 17, so I had 3 years, and I loved PR, and I was like, I told my boss at the time, what do I do? I'm like studying forensic psychology and criminology, and she's like, you want to know a secret? I'm like, yeah. She was like, I went to John Jay too, and I studied criminology.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, wow. And now you're the head PR officer. And she goes, it's not what sometimes it's not what you study, it's what life leads you to.
Yeah.
And with your bachelor's, just make sure you learn as much as you can because it's gonna teach you in this job and and then move on. Just get the most experience you can. And I took that very seriously.
Yeah.
And the beauty when I worked there was I got the chance as a junior press officer to pitch the media directly. So in City Hall, they have a press room where all newspapers and TV channels all sit next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am at 20 years old with a press release trying to convince people to come outside to a boring press conference that nobody wanted to attend.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine talking to the New York Times at an early age that you're trying to be confident and discover yourself.
Yeah.
And at that time of my life, I had a lot going on, which I can go into, but um, I would go to the New York Times first, and they're like, "Nope, get away, kid." The New York Sun at the time, "Are you crazy? It's boring." And then he would give me a whole lecture of why he didn't want to go. So really threw me into the fire of, pitching someone and not being scared to talk to people.
Yeah.
And it was a very interesting time in my life. I did a lot of events, especially like with the community and culture. Every parade in New York City, I did them because
Wow.
none of my bosses wanted to go. So I would go with his press, his chief of staff and security and photographer. So I learned early on to maneuver myself and to go back. Like I said, during that time in my life, I was going through a very interesting transition.
Well, before you get to that, I just want to say, it would be interesting, or it's interesting you're studying criminology because I could see you as a detective, that you would be like a
Still do
no
it.
nonsense when the suspect comes in, and yeah, I would hate to be sitting in front of you being questioned. Um,
Oh,
but it's like I could see you in both roles as a detective and obviously what you're doing now. But it's interesting how you had this on hands life experience or internship experience to go along with your studies. And I think that's kind of the best of both worlds, having myself done being a DC intern while going
mhm.
to school full time and taking on a lot of internships because sure, school can teach you a lot, but it doesn't teach you about trying to go out and pitch to the New York Times. Um, or about even just, I guess in college, if you're studying communications, of course, they're going to teach you how to write press releases, but a lot of what you learned is priceless, especially at that age. Um,
Yeah, no, for sure, for
yeah.
sure.
I
And
remember you telling me, sorry, what were you about to say?
no, that's why when like I meet young kids, whether it's my little cousins or just young kids in general, like that are about to graduate high school, especially now, I always tell them like take as much experience as you can because school's not going to teach you that. They're just going to teach you how to read and write the correct way and how to open up your mind to the world with, history and philosophy and other things. But it's very important for especially the ones that go into college not knowing what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I always say just try to get as many different internships in different places. And if it's not internships, try to meet as many people and ask a lot of questions. I used to do that a lot when I graduated high school. I would go and just, you know, at the time it was MySpace, try to look for executives and ask them to sit with me for 10 minutes and just tell me what they do. So I was always proactive in that sense.
Yeah, it really does help because, in all honesty, you could be doing what you or do you think you could be doing what you're doing now without having gone to college?
Um, no,
Oh, okay.
I don't think so. You know why? And that's
Yeah.
why like I get upset sometimes right now in the industry because there's a lot of young publicists that start their own firm, right? Or they call themselves publicists and they never studied it, but they do it for the glitz and the glam of it, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't do it the strategy and what it entails. Like I literally read every morning. Um,
And you got
and
that from your schooling, going to read the newspaper every
well,
morning.
excuse me.
Mhm.
Mainly like at City Hall, they taught me to read every newspaper and look through video clips on CNN and New York One and CBS Two, and that's where it all started. But the schooling part, what helps is that for me, every day I go to school. I
Mm-hmm.
do it to do this like I used to do in college, but college, what it prepared me is how to write a press release, how to not be redundant in wording, how
Mm-hmm.
to think things through when you're writing a quote, how to prepare people to be intellectual in an interview, give reporters what they need and want. Um, School really taught me that for sure.
I see. Yeah, well, it certainly is nice to have the schooling part for sure, especially like the American liberal arts degree where even though you may not be majoring in biology, just taking bio courses makes you well-rounded if you're a criminology major. But I do want to tap into the hard time in life because you shared that with me before. And how did that hard time, I feel it obviously it also shaped you into what you're doing now. How so?
Yeah, when I was working at City Hall, I was going to school full time and I had two majors and
Hmm.
I already was 18, over 18 at that time. and I had four jobs. I still kept my dental job. I
Mm-hmm.
was working in the office, but quickly I became a dental assistant really quickly.
Wow.
Um, I became a bartender because I wanted to get more money for my books. My I had several jobs. Like I was a security at the US Open, um, you name it. And I was doing all of that. I wouldn't sleep because I also had deadlines with schooling, right?
Mm-hmm.
At that time, my parents, unfortunately, right after 9/11, when I was 18, my mom lost all her businesses through someone that like burned them.
Mm. Yeah.
And my brother, my sister were very small at the time, and my mom says, we can't do this anymore. Like we're in a hole. We're broke.
Mm.
And the insurance won't kick in because they think they're investigating us. They think we burned them. And
Mm.
it's gonna take time. With the little money we have, we're moving to Virginia.
Mm.
And I'm like, Virginia?
That's
So she said, we're gonna
Virginia.
move so we have a better quality of life. And I'm like, well, I have all these jobs. I'm in school. I can't leave. My mom's like, well, I can't leave you here by yourself. I was like, well, I'm staying.
Mhm.
And she's like, well, where are you gonna live? Like, I have nowhere to leave you.
Mhm.
And she didn't want to leave me with family because you know how family dynamics are.
Yeah.
And my aunt said, well, I know this lady that she's renting a room.
Mhm.
So here I am, 18 years old, living with a 60-year-old woman and paying rent at 18. And that's where it started. Like after that, I really went through a very tough time because I was trying to really finish school and City Hall only paid me 23,000 a year. So imagine trying to
In New York City.
yeah, sustain yourself and really have a dream. And it was hard. After that, I moved into a basement. And trust me, in that basement, I think I got bronchitis like so many times because it was cold, there was no heat, and
Mm.
the bathroom was so tiny. But for me, it was just a place to sleep because I worked all the time and
Yeah.
just to have my stuff. And my mom suffered a lot because she's like, oh my God, I have an 18-year-old, you know,
Yeah.
in
Living
New
in
York
New York.
by herself doing all this and also working all these crazy jobs that are some of them were, late night ones, like the bartending. And luckily I never worked like a bar. I always did like big events, like MTV events and stuff like that, funny enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was very challenging because I had I couldn't afford living, so I moved a lot. Like I moved several times throughout my entire life. Um,
Not being
and then
stable, living
yeah,
with this. Yeah.
and stable is a very key word in my life,
Mm-hmm.
stability.
Yeah. I.
Um, and I'll mention that soon. But um, fast tracking at City Hall one night, we had an Italian heritage event, and my boss was like, "I have to go home. You handle the event." We were honoring Robert De Niro that night,
Mm-hmm.
so I was in charge of his publicist and him and his team. We were giving him a proclamation,
Mm-hmm.
and I got really friendly with his publicist, who is still his publicist. And I said, I would love to get into I had the courage. I would really like to get into entertainment. And he's like, would you want to intern for us? I said,
Wow.
oh my God, I would love to. He's like, but we don't pay. And I said, okay, that's fine. So I met with them, immediately got the job, was under his wing, and I would have to go to Robert De Niro's house every morning to give him press clips.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because I would see I would have that interaction of a high level person in a different way from City Hall.
Yeah. It's like the celebrity world, not the
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. And I
the
had to
city.
still right. And I had to still keep all my jobs. And I left City Hall, so my main income, I didn't have it anymore. And
Mm,
I graduated.
mm,
And, I had a lot more expenses. I was
mm-hmm,
getting older. And one day, 6 months in, they love working with me. I'm like, is there a way that I can get a salary? And they were like, no, but what we can do is we can recommend you to our PR agency for Tribeca Film Festival, which was Rubenstein.
mm-hmm,
Rubenstein is at the time was they still are, but not as much. But at the time, they were the biggest PR agency in the world.
mm-hmm,
It was ran by legendary publicist Howard Rubenstein, and he had other divisions where his sons Stephen Rubenstein and Richard Rubenstein, who now run the firm because Howard passed. Um, it was a collective of them,
mm-hmm,
and I said great, and I was making $23,000 again, um, at the firm, but I worked under the Howard, which I was very privileged to because I had three bosses. I had to be the PR assistant to three people, and each person had like 10 accounts, and they were major accounts from Tribeca Film Festival to HBO, Trump, um, the New York Post, the World Trade Center when they were rebuilding it, the New York Giants, the Jets, you name it. And I would assist all of them, and my job was to get contacts and media lists and do reports for clients and take notes and start press releases. But it was at a different level because it was a faster speed than what I was used to, and different personalities, and egos. And it was very, while I was there, oh, I skipped the part when I was working for Robert De Niro. At that time, I went to live with my dad. My dad was a super at a very high luxury building in the Upper West Side, and he would I would sleep on his couch on weekdays, and then on weekends when he would go home to his family, I would sleep in his bed. But I had a very big accident. The building, even though it was luxury, it was very old.
mm,
And I was taking a shower, and all of a sudden the water became very hot, and
mm.
I slipped and hit my head, and I was in hot water for hours, and I burned.
Oh, goodness.
I suffered second and third degree burns in parts of my body that nobody ever will even notice or know.
Oh,
And I was in the hospital for 6 months. But the beauty is I'm in the hospital and I'm working. And I had three surgeries, skin graft surgeries. And the lady's like, I don't understand. How are you still working? At that time, we actually had laptops. It kind of grew in. And I
yeah,
was like, I cannot afford to lose this opportunity. And I wanted to show everyone like nothing's gonna stop me, even if I'm down.
yeah.
And all my life, even through the hard times, which I went through a lot more, um,
You've been through a lot.
oh, there's more, but like work and school were always my scapegoat. That was my haven. It still is. Even if I feel sad, when I'm working, I feel happy.
Mm-hmm,
You
mm-hmm.
And work has always been my scapegoat. But wanted to just share that part. But at Rubenstein, it was amazing because even though I wasn't making a lot of money, and my bosses, I dealt with a lot of egos. My bosses were tough on me. I would always be the last one to leave very late. Like everybody left at 6 or 7. I would be leaving at 10, coming at 6 in the morning. And mind you, sometimes I had different jobs during different days. And I did it because I always wanted to be a perfectionist at what I do and for people to know that I was professional.
Mm-hmm.
And I would
Were they
always,
tough on you because they saw something in you, or they were tough on you because you're a woman of color?
Allison, to be honest with you,
Uh-huh.
all my career until about maybe 8 years ago, I was the only Latina at the table or working at these agencies or companies.
Yeah,
I
I
was,
believe.
yeah, and now I lost a lot of weight and I feel great, but before I was very curvaceous
Hmm.
and I couldn't afford buying the clothes that all these girls at these agencies, they were all white, beautiful, blonde, blue eyes or brunettes, and they would always wear like these, designer clothes, and I would just go to Target.
Yeah.
And but I loved fashion, so I knew how to, and my mom always taught me how to dress well.
Hmm.
And I would always just make sure it looked expensive. People would never know it was from Target. Sometimes I would lie because I remember Oprah did a collaboration with Target one time, and I bought this beautiful lace skirt. I would wear it all the time. And they're like, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful." And I would say, "Yeah." And they're like, "What designer is it?" I was like, "Oh, I don't remember."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it was always tough because in those agencies, nobody looked like me or talked like me. And I
Yeah.
went through a lot, even at those agencies, because they would do like a 3-month assessment to everyone. And my feedback was always, you need to cut your hair because my hair was really long. You need to make it very, sharp and edgy. And also we have feedback for you. You have a very strong accent when you talk. And when you get nervous, it kicks in more. And when we're in meetings with clients, we want to make sure you control your accent.
Wow, the world of PR, because I don't think you would have gotten that feedback at City Hall.
No, but at City Hall, I was also a number in the sense of, okay, how many Latin employees do we have at City Hall? How many Black, how many white, how many Asian?
Oh, I see.
So, yeah,
That's
it's very
still
interesting. I never really shared that with anybody,
yeah,
but they would literally go through ethnicities within the different divisions. And
yeah,
at the PR agency, I was the only Latin girl.
yeah.
Um,
It's what a world. It's
yeah.
my gosh,
And
the world that people of color have to navigate through.
oh, of course, and even still now. But and I can get into that a little more. But after that, I was in Rubenstein for 2 years. I was lucky because I worked on the Michael Jackson account. I worked on the Oprah account. I worked on Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton as well. They promoted me and I made 28,000. And but I got to learn a lot because every morning they would send an email, who would like to volunteer to do the Devil Wears Prada premiere? Um, it's not for pay, it's for experience. And I would take them all.
Yeah,
I did Mission Impossible, the first one. I did Devil Wears Prada. I was like, I want to learn everything. I'm here.
yeah.
And I did it. And sometimes I would literally be broke and not eat, and because I would take these opportunities and I couldn't do my side jobs. So I
Quick
would,
question before I
mhm,
forget, while you're on that topic. You're taking these free opportunities. Um,
mhm.
I can certainly relate as a freelance writer. How long should one keep taking free work before, because I ask myself this all the time, how long am I going to continue writing for free? Um, Not just to get a gift bag to an event, but when it will pay off in the sense of a stable salary. How long should somebody keep doing free work?
That's a hard question. You know why? Because even though I have my company and my set clients,
Mhm.
I still do it. I
Mm,
still help others, even if they can't afford me or pay me. I still help others because life is unpredictable.
mhm,
And sometimes when you do these opportunities for free, you never know what door that's going to bring you into, or who you're going to meet that's going to connect you to another door. And I
yeah,
always go into it with that mentality. I think now that I'm older, I'm just a lot more selective.
yeah,
Um, if it's an opportunity I feel is that I can see a potential that can help me, great. Or if someone can like owe me a favor
Yeah.
and I can use that card later on, that's when I do it now. A lot more selective.
Gotcha. Like
Um,
you have the discernment to know like this is worth taking.
yeah, because
Okay.
now that I'm older, I appreciate and respect my time a lot more.
In your opinion, and I hate to word it like this, are white people also taking free?
Oh, those are the ones that want it the most.
Well, no, like white publicists.
Oh,
Are
um,
they having to do that too? Do you think? I guess
mm,
it depends on their level.
I don't know. Everybody's different because all my white publicist friends,
Mhm.
we all kind of grew up together forming our businesses, and they actually have a lot of more morals that I have and values. So they do that for free. Other ones that I know, they don't. They're about their check and their money.
Mm,
Um, it depends on who you are and how you were raised, to be honest with you,
but
and how you were raised to understand um life and navigate it. Um, but yeah, no, a lot of them, they're the majority of them, they're about their getting paid.
yeah,
But us women of color, whether it's Latin publicists or um Black publicists, we're more lenient in taking free jobs.
yeah. I think it's probably because we have to struggle.
Um, I learned a lot and it was a struggle for me, but in so many
What are
levels.
things that have helped you when you launched your own PR agency?
I knew how to build a structure, but I think the part where I learned the most was after I left Rubenstein, I went to work for Quinn PR,
Hmm.
and that was the best experience of my life. Um, they did hospitality and real estate, and it was owned by Florence Quinn,
Hmm.
a white female, but she was a liberal woman.
Hmm.
Um, she hired all types of people of color.
Oh,
And I remember when I went to the interview, because when I was at Rubenstein during my lunch break, Allison, I
hmm.
would I would apply for everything because I was like, I need to make more money. I need to
Hmm.
be stable because like I kept moving,
Yeah, still
and
moving.
still moving, yeah. And to be honest with you, like I was like, I just need to make more money. And my parents couldn't afford to help me at
Hmm.
all.
Hmm.
And um, I went to the interview at Florence Quinn, and they were like, well, you have a lot of entertainment experience and political experience, but we're looking for someone with hospitality experience. And I'm like, I understand. I said, but please give me a chance. I know strategy. I know this. Like,
You know
I
the
know,
mechanics
hey,
of PR.
huh?
You know the mechanics, the theory of it.
Yeah, and I said I've learned so quickly, and I had the luxury at Rubenstein to do some real estate projects or hospitality. And she was like, you know what? I'm gonna hire you, but you're gonna go work for the real estate division. I was like, oh man, I wanted to do hotels and chefs, and they represented islands, and I went to the boring side, right? Real estate. I
Yeah,
had to learn real estate very quickly because it was commercial and residential. At that time, residential was booming.
yeah.
But with Florence Quinn, what I loved about her structure is that there was a lot of women of color and men,
Hmm.
but every morning we would do brainstorms for all the clients. And I always made sure that in those brainstorms, even if it wasn't the clients that were under my bosses, that I would give ideas.
Hmm.
And that's where I learned how do you make a client be more newsworthy, more sexy when it's boring.
Hmm.
And quickly enough, I started making at Florence Quinn, and I like to mention money because of just different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But I started making 30,000 in
Mm-hmm.
6 months. She gave me 40,
Wow.
and in a year, I was making close to 80.
Wow. That's
So
a
I
big jump from
promoted.
your 23.
I was at that time, I was 24.
Well, I mean, it's a big jump from your 23,000
Oh,
at City
mhm.
Hall.
Yeah. So at that time, I got into a relationship. So we were living together. So I had a little bit of more stability.
Mm-hmm.
And man, when I tell you I quickly escalated, is because I brought a lot of my entertainment and political
Contact.
experience
Oh.
into real estate. Like I would I would contact all my friends that were still in entertainment to invite celebrities and people to our opening parties of a residential building.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll have the Food Network do a segment at one of our commercial real estate places
Mm-hmm.
and then flip it and do publicity. The Food Network just did at building 1141 Broadway,
Yeah.
And I really made real estate sexy. And at that time, the New York Times would always write about every Sunday in the real estate section what buildings were doing interesting amenities. And I was one that always had my buildings in there.
Yeah.
The clients loved me. And what I also learned from Florence when we would go to meetings, no one's the head of the table with her.
Mm-hmm.
We're a team.
Mm-hmm.
So she would never allow, if there wasn't room at the table for the meeting,
Mm-hmm.
I would have to sit on the side, she would always look at me and she's like, remember, come, head of the table with your chair on the side. So I would have to roll my chair and sit next to her at the head.
Wow.
And yeah, it was so much inclusion with her. And she would always do like group training for us to kind of get to know each other and how to work in a team. And she was the one that taught me the most why you have to do a to-do list every day.
Wow.
And you know, it was just a beautiful experience. And I was there for 2.5 years.
Wow.
And of course, financially, I wanted to grow again. And I went and I applied at Target, and I worked for Target for 3 months. I did not last. When I tell you I cried every day, I cried every day.
In their corporate office?
Yeah. Um, in New Jersey. It was a fun experience because that's when I really got to travel
Mm-hmm.
and travel with a team and do events outside of New York, but I didn't fit in. It was very white corporate America.
Mm-hmm.
It came from an experience of having inclusion and having, you know, everybody just love each other and accept each other.
Yeah.
And it was very, very hard. I would cry literally every day
Mm-hmm.
because if I had a pitch idea, I was used to like just pitching it.
Yeah.
No, if I had a pitch idea or if I had an opportunity with the New York Times or Wall Street Journal, it would have to go through a million corporate
Oh,
people. And
yeah.
by the time it got approved, it was over.
Yeah. I
And I
can
was,
totally relate.
yeah, I wasn't used to that. I felt very trapped.
Yeah. I totally relate. I was doing sales for International Affairs magazine, my first job out of getting my master's. I had a lot of freedom, a lot of travel, and then a Canadian company wanted to hire me, so I thought, okay, it would offer healthcare and all these benefits, and I took that, and it was very corporate, and I hated it. Absolutely hated it.
Yeah, that's when I noticed corporate was not for me
Yeah,
at all.
yeah.
And I left that, and my old boss at City Hall was like, I started a company, a PR company. He was the advisor for Giuliani, Ken
Hmm.
Friedman. You want to work with us? And I worked with them, and they did crisis for AIG.
Hmm.
They did crisis. They mainly focused on crisis. For the DEA, they did crisis for Central Park, Fordham University, major entities here in New York.
Mm-hmm.
It was us three. It was his business partner who also worked for Giuliani. He was one of the head of advisories at City Hall when I worked there. And then my old boss and me. It was just us three,
Mm-hmm.
two white Jewish men and me. And I quickly grew there because I brought like uh more more of an experience to get clients in the lifestyle side. And we
Mm-hmm.
got a lot of amazing clients. Like Veronica Webb was one of the clients that we first signed under me.
Wow.
And I love her. I love her very, very much. And Chris Humphreys, we worked with him because he was getting divorced with Kim Kardashian. So we
Yeah.
did Crisis, but we worked very hand in hand with them and when he was on the show and all that stuff. And we got the 5 borough bike tour, which
Oh,
I managed. I quickly grew a team
that's
and I grew a team of color.
that's good.
Yeah, and trained those girls, and I quickly became a junior partner at the age of 28.
Wow.
And they trusted me very, very much. But then at one point, and we also worked with the New York Daily News, you name it. But with Fordham, we got out of the crisis side and we would pitch all the professors every morning to the media to talk about different topics.
Mm-hmm.
So all my worlds always kind of combined in a weird way.
Yeah.
And then I started realizing they gave me too much trust in the sense that they wouldn't even come into the office.
Oh.
And they're in the Hamptons and having fun, and I'm here stressed out, and I'm like, and running a team. And I quickly started thinking, I'm like, what am I doing?
You can start your own.
I didn't want to. That's
Oh.
the funny part. But I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And one day we went to a New York Daily News meeting, my team and I,
Mm-hmm.
and they were saying that they did a study that their number one reader were Hispanics.
Mm.
And that's how they learned English when they come to New York, reading the Daily News.
Mm.
And I found that very interesting because at the time, all my friends were in the Latin industry.
Mm-hmm.
My best friend was working for the biggest Latin radio station. One friend was a music producer and worked with all these artists. One friend did this, that, they
Mm-hmm.
worked for Univision. And I was like, there's a crossover here.
Mm-hmm.
If we're the number one readership, why aren't we targeting with the media Latin folks?
Mm-hmm.
And it kept going in my head. And through Chris Humphreys, I met this girl. She was a publicist, Dominican like me.
Mm-hmm.
And we went out to dinner because we connected. She's like, "Oh my God, you're Dominican. I'm Dominican." And there's not many people that you find in the industry at the time that share your same culture, you know?
Yeah.
And immediately she was like, "We should start our own business." And I'm like, I don't want to. I don't even know how to. She's like, "Don't worry, we'll do it together." And I know some investors.
Oh
Long
wow.
story short, she got an investor for us. And here we are. I broke up with my boyfriend at the time, and she's like, "Why don't we, with the money he's giving us, you know how all these white firms do it? They have a townhouse or they have an office in a luxury building. We have all the amenities." I was like, "Okay, sure." We moved to the financial district, 25 Broad.
Wow.
And when I tell you it lasted 6 months, it lasted 6 months.
Okay.
And for many reasons. The reasons were um I felt like that wasn't where I belonged.
Mm.
Like I would walk into the lobby and I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
I haven't made it so much to this level to live in a luxury building. I'm a
Right.
girl from Queens. I love to live in my community. What am I doing here? And her and I were at odds because I was bringing in all the clients.
Yeah.
And
But she
um,
wasn't
she
pulling her
was,
weight.
no. And I
Yeah.
got very, very frustrated. And I had given all my savings into the business as well. But she wanted it very luxurious.
Mm.
We had Apple computers and all this stuff and a full staff. And we only had one client and we had like a full staff. It
Yeah.
just felt right. And I left. I was broke
Yeah.
because she threatened me
Oh
and
my.
and we were roommating in this space as well.
Oh,
So, um, the lease was under my name.
oh dear.
I still had to pay the rent there,
Yeah.
even though I didn't live there, and I wasn't working with her because we had a lease.
Yeah. Oh my.
So I took the clients, and I'm like, I'm gonna start my own. But what happened? Where was I gonna live?
Mm-hmm.
So I started couch surfing, and I
Oh,
couch surfed for, I started my company when I was 30. I couch surfed until I was 33, 34.
oh my goodness. Oh,
Yeah, and it was so bad because I never wanted to bother anybody, but at the time when I started my company, two people left with me, but they didn't pay enough. And the money that I made, I had to pay back in that rent. And
yeah.
then after she moved out, the lease was up, we still had to pay that investor back.
Uh, I bet
And
you learned a lot about who to hook up with business wise from that experience.
I did.
Yeah.
And I still kept learning, but so I would always be broke.
Uh,
And when I tell you, when I started my company, I took on my friends. And when I started my company, the whole goal was, all right, now I'm 30, and now I really want to start a company that I know that's going to work. And at that time, I said, I'm going to do Latin clients and cross them over into American markets.
mm,
And at the time, my friends were at the studio and they called me. They were very big Latin producers, and they still are.
mm-hmm.
And said, we have this girl named Jackie Cruz here. She's recording with us. I was like, oh, okay. She's looking for PR. I said, okay, what does Jackie do? She's on Orange is the New Black. It's a
Mm,
new show that's coming out.
mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
said, okay, I'll talk to her. Met with Jackie. And at the time on Orange, she wasn't making a lot. She wasn't a series regular.
Yeah.
But I was like, I see the value in this. And I'm gonna get back into Hollywood because every time I pitched the client, they were like, well, your agency is not big enough. Who do you represent? That's what they always ask me.
Uh,
I still get that, you know?
yeah.
And I started working with Jackie and she would pay me 500 a month.
Wow.
And it was first season, but then the beauty of it, she introduced me to all her other cast members
That's
on the
good.
Latin. So Dasha Polanco, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they all became my clients.
Wow.
And then two of the black actresses on the show became my clients. And they didn't pay me a lot because these girls, a lot of them weren't actresses. A lot of them were discovered and they got a good opportunity. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them didn't understand how to maneuver themselves in Hollywood. So besides me doing the PR with Netflix, I taught them how to get a lawyer, how to get a finance person, how to organize themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And season two came, season three came, everybody started becoming a series regular, and the show became a huge bang. And here I am going to SAG Awards, going to Golden Globes with them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just me by myself, like trying to maneuver all these girls. And at the time, through events, going to events with them and them saying, she's the best PR, you got to work with her.
More
I got
cl-
a I got a client, he did the voiceover for Jane the Virgin,
Oh, yeah. Wow.
and he was the main character. So at that time, in Hollywood, Latin actors and programming was a big thing.
Yeah.
And then, I couch surfed for a while, started making a little bit of more money, finally paid off this investor. And then I just started focusing on getting music clients and other clients. And I would work, but she would always give me the opportunity, come work from my office. And, you know, if you help me with some of my clients, like pitching them, I'll give you a couple of bucks, but you can also use our database of contacts.
Yeah.
She was
That-
very pinnacle. And then one of my other white publicist friends started her company too, and it will be us three just working from this girl's office and helping her, but also building our companies.
yeah.
And I would couch surf in a lot of their homes as well.
Yeah.
But, you know, I went through a lot at that time. Like
Of
I would
course.
couch surf at my aunt's house in Long Island. And I would remember I would have no money in my bank account, but I had to go to an orange event. But I had to make sure I took the LIRR at a certain time.
Yeah.
And
To get like a discounted.
no, if I didn't take the train at that time, I would miss my train and I would have to wait until 4 in the morning to take the train
Oh, I see.
to these events.
Yeah.
Or many times, like I slept at the 34th Street station because I would miss the train because I was trying to network with these clients even though they weren't paying me much.
Oh my goodness.
Or
Oh,
many,
you have to
I,
stay.
yeah, or many times like I would sleep at my aunt's house in the Bronx and I would come back from events, networking and trying to get more clients. And it would be 2 in the morning and she wouldn't pick up the phone and I would have to sleep outside. And then
Oh,
at 6 in the morning when she woke up, she's like, why didn't you call me? I'm like, I did.
mm,
So, and you always wanted to be respectful, not bang on their door, open the door, because you wanted them to let you back to stay at their house.
yeah.
And that was my method. Those 3 years of my life, I literally, I only had a plastic bag and
Oh,
I left all my stuff in my dad's garage.
uh,
I would just go every weekend and try to switch my clothes or when I would get some money, I would go buy stuff at Kmart on 34th Street because my friend's office was right there. And I would just switch a couple of things and live from that Kmart bag.
hard living. This is very hard living.
Yeah,
Because
and
you also at these different times didn't know if a break was going to come, but you're still taking on, smaller clients and my gosh.
mentally it was hard because
Oh,
you're not stable. And they say when you're not stable, it's very hard for you to be happy.
of course. I can
And
totally relate.
yeah, and when you're not stable, it's very hard to push your passion through.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very hard. I had to go to a meeting. I remember I was meeting with someone, they wanted me to do the PR for their documentary for a
Mm-hmm.
Latin director. And when I tell you my account was negative, $500, I couldn't take the train and I had no money on my Metro card.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I jumped the the train, the stool, and
Oh,
I got caught by the cops. And I started crying. I was like, I just need to get to this meeting.
yeah.
And I was always borrowing money from people and having to pay them back and knowing that I owed money and my account was negative and still having to sustain myself was very hard. But still I had this passion. And the hardest part mentally was you're in all these Hollywood rooms and after parties and you're
Yeah.
seeing Jennifer Lawrence and you're like,
I'm minus $500.
right.
Yeah. And it goes back, to the question, how long do you keep doing that? Just to
No,
get a gift bag at a party or to be at Cannes, like how long? Uh,
yeah. And
and that's different for everyone who answers that question, but
it's very hard. It's like I don't want a gift bag. I need a client. I need to maintain myself. I need stability. And there was many times like luckily my clients were so nice and appreciative because I took them on either for free at the beginning and I've been part of their story, or I would go out of the limb during that time, like styling them and getting them free clothes so they didn't have to pay a stylist, or connecting them to people so their image can grow with the strategy I had. And it was
Yeah.
very hard. Luckily, after the events, they were like, take the car back home. Tell them to drop you off. I was very lucky, and I would sit in those luxury cars and I would cry.
Yeah.
I would cry so much. Um, and at that
It
time,
wasn't adding up. One side you have this luxury and being around these celebrities, and the other side, you don't have your own home, your own bed, your own
um,
stability.
and at that time I rekindled with my dad the relationship, and he rented me a room in his own house.
Oh,
And I went through a lot there too. Like my stepmother was very mean, and why you come late all the time, and how do you sustain yourself? And they bullied me so much to the point that someone stole her jewelry.
oh,
I remember one time, and that's when I left. And she accused me and called the cops on me
oh, of stealing.
of
Oh,
stealing. And this all was happening at the same time. But at that moment, I was 34, and I'm like, I finally have a home, and I'm
mm-hmm.
building this business, it's growing.
Yeah.
And she did that, and it hurt so much. And come to find out, it was my stepsister who stole it. To this day,
Oh,
she hasn't said sorry, but that's what therapy's for.
yeah. But it
And
affects your psychology. Yeah. But I guess if you just keep on keeping on, you will eventually get a break.
well, soon enough, I left, and I got into a new relationship, and I lived with him.
Okay.
And I remember one day a friend of mine calls me. I need to introduce you to this guy, Zach. He's very well connected, and you guys will hit it off. We hit it off, Zach and I, because even though Zach was white privileged, Zach went through a lot of the same things I went through. He was homeless, he was adopted. Like he had a very rich story, but he was well off because he knew so many people and they would pay him for consulting or management.
Yeah.
And he calls me one day after we hit it off, and he goes, would you want to represent a nutritionist?
Mm.
Nutritionist? I said, I'll do anything. I'll do it all. So I'm like, who's the person? Maye Musk.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow.
And I said, oh, sure. What's her history? Well, she's a nutritionist, but I'm managing her now, and I want her to be the first 65-year-old, model with white hair. She's been modeling all her life. I was like, well, there's a lot there. I'm down. Mind you, I didn't know who Elon Musk was.
Right.
So she starts paying me a certain amount of money,
Mm-hmm.
which is more than what I was getting paid for my other luxurious clients at the
Mm-hmm.
time. And I'm like, oh, now I'm going to become more stable. And I got her all this press, and we got her on runways and editorials. And at one point, within 5 months, the media starts telling me, oh, can she talk about Elon Musk? Can she talk about Elon Musk? And I'm like, Zach, they keep asking for her to talk about her son, Elon Musk. Who's Elon Musk? He's like, Kanessa, I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want the strategy was not to focus on Elon, but Elon is this person.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what? Oh, but I continued the same strategy of not mixing Elon with her.
Yeah.
Very successful. And I remember Zach left, and Zach was a very pinnacle. I'm very grateful to Zach because he also introduced me. He said, do you want to do PR for Daniel Ek?
Mm-hmm.
He got me another client. Daniel Ek is the owner of Spotify.
Wow.
He wants PR for personal for him and his wife. Did that for a while, for 3 years. Then DJ Avicii passed. Do you want to do the crisis for it?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And I started traveling all around the world with all these people. And I remember I got May after Zach stopped working with her. I got May uh, a gig, um, and I got a commission of $10,000.
Wow.
And that was my first big check
Mm-hmm.
that I've never seen in my life.
Yeah.
And when I tell you, I saw that check come in and I just cried and cried. And at that time, I was having difficulties with my boyfriend. And I said, this is the check that's going to get me my own apartment.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. I got my own apartment. And when I moved in, I cried so much. I was stable.
I
And
imagine.
it was just, they changed my life,
Yeah.
and I met so many people and I got to feel better and more confident. And you know what it is to be at the palace in Qatar and sitting with the Sheikah and her and the king and I'm like, what is this Latin girl doing here? You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
or us going to Beirut and going and meeting all these amazing designers or meeting like big rich people, or
Yeah.
going to Paris for Fashion Week. And I'm not staying, I'm telling you, like at the Hyatt, I'm staying at the Four Seasons with them.
Yeah.
And like, I will forever be grateful to them, to
Of
be
course.
honest with you. And then after that, I got Maluma. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I was like, okay, now I'm in the Latin music industry. And their goal was for me to make him more, American. And I crossed him over and he was a client for 6 years until just recently, but I got
Yeah.
a lot of more clients, and that's what I've been focused on. I work with some of the biggest Latin names in the world, and even meeting Anok, he said, "You need to work with this girl," because she was working with KCD, a very white PR firm, and they
Yeah.
didn't understand, you
Yeah.
know? And Kyle was trying to move the needle with Anok in a different way in the fashion industry. And he said, I don't care who you represent. They told me that you will understand her and you'll strategize. You're hired. And I've been with Anak for the last 6 years.
And she's really taken on or gotten some really amazing campaigns. So, and
Yeah,
that,
last night we celebrated her being the face of Mugler fragrance
yeah.
at a private dinner. It was beautiful to see that they invited a lot of colored folks. I was like, oh, we're gonna go into a white event. And no, it was all shapes and sizes and colors. And I was so happy that at this point where she is and where we are together as a unit, this is what we've brought through us fighting for so
Yeah.
many years.
Yeah, doesn't just happen. It comes through your strategy and all of your experiences and yeah,
Yeah,
that's amazing. And every opportunity you've had, it's been a stepping stone to the next thing,
absolutely.
even through the
Absolutely.
hardships.
Yep. And
Um,
now,
mhm.
yeah,
Go ahead on.
everybody talks about you're successful. I don't see myself as successful. I see myself as stable. Now I have a home. I have an amazing partner. I
Hmm.
have a great team. My partner works with me,
Hmm.
and my cousin is my assistant, and I have family around. And I love working with my family because they know how hard I work. Like I went to sleep at 2 in the morning last night, but I woke up early and it doesn't stop for me. And they see that and that motivates them.
Yeah,
And my clients, they know how I am. And now it's not success, it's stability. And I don't call it success because I still have to fight and navigate still for myself, for my team, and for my clients. It's not easy.
yeah,
Now I don't face challenges within a white market. I face challenges within my own Latin market
right.
with peers in the Latin industry that, they want to know what it is to be global. And a lot of publicists that are Latin envy me now. So
I
now it's a different flip, in life. But I still treat everybody the same with kindness and respect.
I always say as a a black woman, if it's not a white person keeping me down, then it's a woman keeping me down. And if it's not a woman keeping me down, it's my own black people trying to keep me down. So um sometimes we may think that it's just the white world. It really isn't just the white world. It's our own ethnic, whatever ethnic groups we
Yeah,
come from. But we have to be strong and have a thick skin and just keep moving. Um,
absolutely. And
yeah.
it's hard. And the music industry especially, it's dominated by men. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to see a lot of transition of women. And in fashion, it's a lot of Europeans. They're
Yeah.
very hard to work with. But I'm happy to see people like Kyle Hagler, who left Next and started his own company
Mm-hmm.
like mine and
Mm-hmm.
represent women of color within fashion and fight for them. So
Yeah.
those type of people inspire me because they're part of the change. We're part of the change together. And at least I have certain people that I can really, really say that they back me up.
Yeah. And that's what's most important. At least you've got that stability now where you can think better probably and strategize and be the best publicist you can be because you have that stability. Well, last question, what would you tell your 16-year-old self?
Stability comes with fear,
Mm,
and you're gonna have to fight through that fear to keep your stability.
mm, yeah.
You know, Y- it's this world's about surviving,
Hmm.
but through the good moments, try to take a deep breath and at least take in that moment.
Yeah.
Because sometimes fear kicks in and you're scared of, oh my God, is this client happy? Oh my God, did the media get what they needed? Oh my God, you know, you're always running on fear adrenaline, even though you have stability and you don't enjoy those moments. But now talking to you and going through the story, it reminds me like I just have to continue to try to take a deep breath and enjoy the moments.
Yeah, for sure, especially the glamorous moments that you're in, because so many
Yeah.
people would love to be in those rooms that you're in. Oh,
Yeah, and it's not that glamorous.
yeah.
Sometimes
If you're going, I guess if you're just going to the party as a guest, it's glamorous, but when you've been behind the details, it may not feel so glamorous.
no, but I will tell myself that like stability does come from fear and you're gonna have to fight that fear.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
you're always scared to lose that stability.
Yeah, for sure. And nothing is certain in life, so um
No,
yeah,
and life is unpredictable.
yeah.
That's why you always have to be kind to everyone because you never know who you're gonna meet. That one person that you thought, oh, he doesn't have connections or is not a big person. That person
Mhm.
will give you, you never know.
For sure. And I've definitely had that happen before, estimating people. But yeah, well, thank you
Never.
so much for your time.
Thank you for listening to me talk a lot.
No, but you have an inspiring story.
Thank you, and thank you for being interested in it.
I hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode and that you have found a soulful connection to the conversation. God bless you, and until the next episode, go bless somebody else.